Hello everybody, this is Jordan here with TrueHumanity. Today I think I have a wonderful video here. It's going to be shorter probably, and it's going to be an important update to what I'm going to be doing here on this channel through TrueHumanity. So, what's going to be starting here, or what I'll be starting to do, is making separate videos on the topics of unifying principles, the human condition, and current affairs, while also keeping it parallel and in line with everything I'm talking about within the ancient civilizations moving forward. And I'm going to continue to chronologically order or number these videos in order. So at some point in the future, I can create playlists so that others can focus in on these specific areas or topic areas, and they could kind of stand on their own as their own little topic area series. I think what'll be best is to continue this chronological order that I've laid out so far, especially with the future examination of these ancient civilizations, because they're not detached from the unifying principles and human conditions, which I want to start discuss independently per se, but because remember, everything does tie together in the overall picture. So I believe that there's some important information that doesn't quite fit in at this moment, where I'm at in telling this larger story. As we started with catastrophism to ancient civilizations, well, we're going to go into that. So in the future, maybe, possibly at times, it may seem out of order, but it will make sense when you look at and put it into the context of this larger picture, this larger story. And in those separate discussions, if you want to call it that, I will provide some context so you're not completely lost if you're kind of following along chronologically. And maybe we haven't delved deep into that particular whatever I'm talking about yet in the greater story. So it's important here that I have to get through Egypt and the Great Pyramid. As I briefly went over in our first launch video, the Great Pyramid of Giza is truly one of the most complex and amazing megalithic stone structures still in existence today. All over the world. This is, the big daddy of them all, if you want to call it. So most important to kick this off is to discuss the geometric and astronomical significances that are encoded into the Great Pyramid and the following numerical ciphers that have been encoded into our most ancient texts following this Burckle crater event of 5,000 years ago, and how all of this, or much of this, is discussed and examined ad nauseum in the work of Hamlet's Mill, where they uncover a lot of this cipher in the ancient texts, which then subsequently connects to these ancient megalithic structures, such as the Great Pyramid. So there's so much to examine and go over between the pyramid's sacred geometry and the corresponding ciphers in these ancient texts. But we could still get an overall picture of what's going on, because like I've said, you have to lay a foundation somewhere. And if you don't lay it somewhere, how are you ever going to build this bigger picture, this bigger structure, whatever you want to call it? So we have to examine and go over the Great Pyramid and touch on Egypt, because it's one of the best places to, lay this foundation down. So I will be discussing the work of Hamlet's Mill, which was written and researched by MIT professor Giorgio de Santillana and Herta von Deschend, I believe in the 1960s. And in Hamlet's Mill, this work, which I don't even believe is still in circulation right now, and if it is, it's very expensive to get your hands on a copy. Thankfully, others have come before us and done some of this research to, extract it from there and put it out. But in Hamlet's Mill by MIT professor de Santillana and Herta von Deschend, it proved that a highly advanced, prior existing civilization encoded these sacred numbers and measurements into these texts and myths I'll be discussing, such as the precessional movement of the Earth over an almost 26,000 year period, and all kinds of details within that. And they also discussed in there the detailed measurements in these ancient texts and myths that are the measurements of our Earth, our sun, our moon, and their relationship in the cosmos between each other. So in the same aspect of, introducing the Great Pyramid and, showing the background for this Hamlet's Mill, and then subsequently we discuss the ancient texts, myths, and legends, we also have to discuss the connection with the Great Pyramid and the work of Nikola Tesla. And in and of itself, that's a whole nother thing to talk about in and of, within itself. But there is a connection there. So once I can lay the foundation of these great mysteries, it's going to be easier for me to incorporate these other topics, such as the unifying principles, human condition, and so on. There's just too much to cover in ancient civilizations. There's just way too much. And if I waited until I got through all of that work, going over the ancient civilizations material, it would be next year, until we could start talking about these other topics. So I believe it's important to begin interspersing these other topics within this greater story I'm telling. And once I can cover the major details of the Great Pyramid, it will be an excellent place to start exploring these different subjects and topics, not necessarily connected to the greater story in this timeline that I'm continuing to examine and discuss. Though it's not removed from it, it may not be germane to the ancient civilization topic I'm discussing that day or whatever. So these can be standalone videos, if you want to call it, without having to be part of the so-called ancient civilization series. So I believe this also emphasizes the importance of my launch video and the overview of topic areas I provided there. I know it's my first video, and I think it's awesome to look back and see what this progression is. And yes, it's scripted and it's a little rigid in terms of its production and the way it's conveyed, but the information in there doesn't matter, it's still true. So moving forward, I will create the introductory overview, if you want to call it video, on the Great Pyramid, as I just discussed before, laying down the work of Hamlet's Mill and Robert Bauval and Randall Carlson, Graham Hancock, all of these people who have kind of come together, getting this evidence through their research, and then we could put it into one coherent picture. Because it's so important that this, like I mentioned in the last video, Egypt is the hinge point. It's almost where we can now shift our focus, our paradigm, from Egypt 5,000 years ago moving forward. Because as I've discussed and will continue to discuss, these semi-regularity of these catastrophes have been civilization restarters, if the most broad way I could put it. So we see that the most recent major restart of civilization was about 5,000 years ago following this Burckle crater event. And I think I've laid down enough so far, and will continue to lay down enough so far, that you can follow what I'm trying to say. So in this introductory overview video that I'll put out in the next few days on the Great Pyramid, Hamlet's Mills, and these ancient texts, it won't be exhaustive, but it's going to give you enough information to lay that foundation to move forward. So you don't have to be completely lost going forward. You understand the major points that you need to know. And after I can do this video, this introductory video, I think it'll be easier and probably more natural to then create these other topic area videos of the unifying principles, the human condition, current affairs, and others, so that I don't have to just solely focus on these videos on the ancient civilizations, because it's a lot of material. It's a lot. Between what I could say in content-wise and what I can reference to these other people's research, there's probably like 30 or 40 hours at least of content before I just get into just random talking and discussing, just content alone. So I have to give this overview of what we're starting at, the foundation of ancient, the old early dynastic Egypt, right after the Berkel crater incident 5,000 years ago, and then these subsequently to that, we're discussing these ancient landmarks that were either still present or existing when these civilizations arose, or possibly what we're going to discuss, this anomaly of this kind of ancient knowledge or ancient guidance, if you want to call it, by these individuals that we're going to discuss, kind of being the leaders, to say, okay, we need to rebuild or refurbish or build upon whatever of some of these ancient locations, that some are still standing, some have been destroyed by the cataclysm, some need to be added upon, like the pyramids, not just the Great Pyramid, but the subsequent ones, etc. So there's a lot going on here, and it does all tie together, but it just goes to continue to show that it's very difficult to put a summary and all of this information into one little package of a video. So I think this will be a great point to now kind of shift gears a tiny bit, where we can continue the track of catastrophism and then into ancient civilizations and continue that story. But we can pause for a moment to lay this little next level of foundation of ancient Egypt, the Great Pyramid, and Hamlet's Mills, and all this ancient, highly advanced scientific and other knowledge that has been encoded into these ancient texts and into the structure, geometry, mathematical, astronomical relations of some of these landmarks. So I'm looking forward to that, and I think this is a great point to where we can now branch out a little bit. We've laid that catastrophism groundwork, and as you know, I'm not this doomsday guy or naysayer, but it's extremely important that we understand this catalyst, this factor that is, for lack of better terms, the pushing the restart clock, and starting the cycle over again. And I'll continue to say that you can't just make an inference from what I'm saying here in this 15-minute video of what's going on, because it's just so much to cover. So it'll be great to make this little overview introductory video on the pyramid and the all of that ancient knowledge encoded into it and in these texts, such as the Vedic tradition, the Bible, etc. I believe it's the Upanishads and other of the Vedas of the ancient, what I guess would be modern-day India area of the globe. And so there's a lot to cover, and as you can see, if you're following this evolution, if you're following an order, if you want to call it like that, you could start to see what I'm talking about by building this bigger picture, this bigger story, this entire fascinating thing that's all around us. I mean, it's just about uncovering what's been either deliberately or unconsciously suppressed and putting all the evidence together, as many have done over the years, and we're continuing to do now, and I think it's accelerating at a faster pace. So there's so much more here than just comets and pyramids and Sumerians and Egyptians. I mean, these are just foundational points where we can start to build upon that. And this will lead into, and as you see, I'll go into greater detail in the overview Great Pyramid video. It starts to tie into this fact of harmony and oneness and unity, and understanding that the ancient civilizations understood these principles, and incorporated into their lives, and etc. And as we start building this story, I think it's going to open these windows, these doors for you to examine within yourself and start to see that maybe there's even more that we've either kind of suppressed in ourselves, or been said, don't worry about that, or that's a conspiracy, or whatever they've said. Maybe there's more to examine, that, oh, there's truth in other things that is being said, And I'm not going to get into those other mystery talks, if you want to call it, today, because there's still foundation to be laid here before, you jump into the deep end, if you want to call it that. Because at the end of the day, no one has it all figured out. There is still mysteries at hand. So anyone who says that they know it all or whatever, you should be suspect of that individual and really kind of ask yourself, well, what do you mean by that? Expound upon that. Don't just give me this blanket statement. So as you can see in this video, I think, we've laid this foundation of the catastrophes, of the comets, the extremely violent and world-changing, human story-changing events of the Younger Dryas period, 12,800 to 11,600 years ago. This ensuing quote-unquote solar-induced dark age where we don't see much going on for thousands of years, and then 5,000 years ago we have this another event, the Burckle crater impact. Then all of a sudden, boom, we see these advanced civilizations pop up out of thin air. And I say thin air now, but I think as I continue to explore this and examine what I'm going to discuss, you can see that it really wasn't out of thin air, if you want to call it. And we'll discuss further what I mean by that. And, from that point of these ancient societies, whether it's Sumer, Egypt, or the ancient Mesoamerican evidence we have through their pyramid structures, the Olmecs, whoever preceded them, and then who after the Olmecs, later on we had the Mayans and the Aztecs and so on. So this is what I mean by there's a bigger story at hand where you have to examine everything we know, starting from the Younger Dryas and moving to modern day. And I want to continue to use this as a vehicle to do that, and try to expose people that there's just more than what we're led to believe, or just we know in our heads, or been ingrained or taught through religion or family or whatever. There's a lot more to examine and explore, because there's such a greater story here that when you open your eyes, you open your heart, you open your minds, it's fascinating and it's great. Like, it's something that we can all get behind and go, wow, this is awesome, We see all this war and negativity and depression and destruction in the world today, and it sucks, excuse it, but it sucks. And I'm tired of watching this on the news and everywhere I go, on social media, whatever. And I think this kind of work, not just, not specifically going into pyramids or unifying principles or whatever, but looking at this entire evidence pool we have here and kind of finding maybe where you could fit in, or where you can kind of be a person to incorporate this into your life, And I've said this before, the point of this project isn't that at the end of the day you become a Tibetan monk and go into the mountains of Tibet and the Himalayas and seclude yourself for the rest of your life, If those individuals want to do that, by all means, I'm not denouncing that. But we have a very special opportunity here in this life, in these bodies, with these great complex minds, to do something greater than use our thumbs and our hands to scroll through Facebook and Instagram and create these just thoughts in our heads, which usually turn out negative, where we're getting fed this negative thing through these platforms. And when you go out into nature, you go out and interact with people on a person-to-person basis, you could see that this is a false reality we've created and we're perpetuating. But when you interact with people and you're not talking about Instagram or social media or politics or war or whatever, you can have these deep and awesome and connecting experiences and conversations. So you could start to now see, I guess, with this update video, the bigger picture I'm trying to show you here is that we're building the story, the major chapters. We're putting the major chapters together in this greater book, this greater human story book. Obviously, there's things to add, there's things to change, there's things to update. Evidence comes in all the time, whether it's the Greenland crater for possibly being the factor with the Younger Dryas impact or whatever. We're here to learn. This is a great experience here on this planet. And I think we can all get behind something better than what we're all engrossed in now, and just, I don't want to go into that today, but I've discussed briefly the human condition and what we see around us today. So I think this is a great video where you could get the real snapshot, I think, overview of True Humanity, previous what we've discussed, and what we're going to go moving forward. And I'm looking forward, I'm excited to what's to come, and seeing what great things we could discover, examine, go through, talk about, because there's just so much out there. And it's going to be impossible if all I do is narrowly focus on the ancient civilizations in that sphere and discount and forget about humanity, the unifying principles, condition, current affairs, and everything else. So I have to begin interspersing, if you want to say, these topics within this video series or these videos. So I'll continue, I will continue to chronologically number these, 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on, so you can follow a normal order, normal progression. So there is some continuing of the story, but we have to interject or put into place here some other things to discuss, because it's important along the way, and they can be standalone on their own. So I hope this gives you a better understanding and clearer picture of what's going on here at True Humanity and what I'm trying to do with this project. And I really look forward to what's to come in these future videos and future examination and discussion of these topics. So I hope you guys have a great day. If you find value in these videos, in this video, it would greatly be appreciated if you would like and share and subscribe to this channel and continue to follow this channel and these videos, because as you've probably seen enough by now that there's a lot more to discuss and to go over. So, my one charge for you today, I guess my one thing I would say if you could do for yourself today is disconnect from these influences we have. Social media, pop culture, whatever, not completely forever, but do it on a large part, and go out and interact with nature, explore nature, your surrounding environment, get out of the four walls of your house, apartment, condo, whatever, and go out and live life, enjoy the things, great things to do and great interactions between other people. And I think you're going to see your life change. And there's other things I'll discuss moving forward about how you can also improve your day-to-day life, yourself, and your interaction with everything. So I hope you guys have a great day and found value in this video, and continue to follow this channel, because there's a lot more to come, and I'll talk to you guys soon. All right, thanks. Bye.